How many Europeans need to be slaughtered before we acknowledge that Islam is not a religion of peace? How many blood-stained bodies and limbs need to be strewn across airports and metro stations before we admit that Islam has a problem with violence? Putting a filter on your Facebook photo is not going to reduce terror. Starting a sympathetic hashtag on Twitter is not going to reduce terror. Creating a sappy cartoon is not going to reduce terror. Hugging a Muslim is not going to reduce terror. Calling someone an Islamophobe is not going to reduce terror. The only thing that will reduce terror is acknowledging and countering its root ideology, Islam. And just to remind you, Islam is a belief system, not a race. It's not racist to criticize a religion. This has nothing to do with Islam. They will lecture us once again. Yet in the past 30 days alone, there have been 23 Islamic attacks in 22 countries, 1,018 people killed, 2,008 people injured, just in the last 30 days. But the usual suspects, like George Galloway, immediately tried to absolve Islam of blame by pointing to foreign policy. And yes, the West's policy in arming jihadists in Libya and Syria was a disaster, but Brussels suspended its bombing campaign against ISIS in Syria 8 months ago. Belgium hardly has a reputation for being a murderous invading empire. You're only blaming foreign policy, so you don't have to acknowledge that Islam has a violence problem. It's far more likely that this was a revenge attack for the capture of Paris massacre culprit Salah Abdeslam, who, by the way, was able to hide in Brussels for 4 months because he was helped by the residents of Molenbeek, proving once again that terrorism has far more support amongst Muslims than the politically correct media will ever recognise. Residents of Molenbeek even rioted and attacked the police during Salah's arrest, calling the terrorist their hero. These terrorists emerge out of the same ghettos that leftists celebrate in the name of diversity. The same Muslim no-go areas that the media and politicians claim are a conspiracy theory, even as film crews are attacked every time they go near them.
Hello, how are you?
Liz Hayes and the 60 Minutes crew attacked.
Hey.
But who did some on the left blame for the Brussels attack? You guessed it. It's Donald Trump, because he might have said mean things that offended the poor terrorists. Even though Trump warned about Brussels and was criticised for it just 2 months ago, calling the Belgian capital a jihadist hellhole.
There's something going on, and it's not good, where they want Sharia law, where they want this, where they want things that, you know, there has to be some assimilation. There is no assimilation. There's something bad going on, and until we find out what it is so we can correct it, you go to Brussels. I was in Brussels a long time ago, 20 years ago. So beautiful, everything's so beautiful. It's like living in a hellhole right now. You go to these different places, there's something going on.
Foreign policy, Donald Trump, even climate change. The left will search for any excuse to avoid having to face the truth. Islam is not a religion of peace. How many times will violent Islamists have to prove this before anything changes? Islam needs a reformation. By immediately labelling anyone who makes this argument a racist or an Islamophobe, you're preventing that reformation. You're allowing extremists to dominate the conversation because smart and sensible people, including Muslim reformists, are being intimidated into silence. You're contributing to the deadly naivety that paved the way for Europe's open border madness. You're contributing to the absurd notion that mass unrestrained multiculturalism works. It doesn't work. Molenbeek proves it doesn't work. Today's attacks prove it doesn't work. How many more attacks in major European cities will we have to witness before we acknowledge that it doesn't work?